Hello everyone, so today I want to talk about what we do when we run out of resources. By we, I mean humanity in general. What will we do when we run out of things that we require in order to live, that we require a certain amount of in order to keep on progressing in life itself, not just in the resources we need to function in the way that gasoline provides our cars with fuel, or we have a certain amount of entertainment in our lives, or if we need a certain amount of education in order to live a greater and more fulfilled life. I'm talking about what we need as human beings to survive physically and even spiritually, but we'll get to that. So what have we done in the past? In the past, when this has happened, when a certain area has run out of resources, there is a resource grab. People will steal food. Like, for instance, in the siege of Leningrad in Russia during World War II. Leningrad was isolated by the German army from Russian support. So during this siege, there was a certain stipend of food that was given to every person. And that stipend kept on getting less and less and less. But when that stipend got to the point to where most people were starving, people were willing to steal. People were willing to even eat people that had died. There were people that even murdered other people in order to eat them. What we have done in the past is very horrific. And in other times when it didn't come to cannibalism, a lot of the time when it was just an area where there was a severe drought or severe lack of food, the potato famine in Ireland, for instance, people either left, but if they could not leave, they could not get out of that area through other resources, then they starved to death. And a lot of the time, those who were the strongest would take from the weakest. So some men, a lot of men, would abandon their families and go out and steal as much food as they could and just try to survive as an individual. During the siege of Jerusalem that the Romans did, and I'm jumping around here throughout history, the Romans did against Jerusalem. There's even a case, and I don't know how this is recorded, but there's even a case of a woman eating her own child and weeping about it afterwards. So we've done, as human beings, not us in particular, but as human beings, we've done terrible things when resources run out, when food runs out, when water runs out, that kind of thing. Though when food runs out and water's still there, that's when the real horrors happen, because when water runs out, it's pretty quick. But when food slowly runs out, that's when the pain is drawn out. Now, why does evil exist? This might seem jumping around philosophically, but I would say that because stagnation is death, physically and spiritually. We duel with each other or nature. Now, when we decide that, okay, we're going to duel with each other, we go into battle against one another in order to claim each other's resources. That is one way of fighting death, but it's through the destruction of other human groups who want the same resources that we need in a time when resources are scarce, damn near minimal. Now, we can either choose to fight with each other, or, and this really applies to modern day more than it did in the past, gather all our minds together, gather all our efforts together, especially with the amount of communication that can happen in the modern world, and the amount of food that we can produce, and the amount of intelligence that we can allow to coagulate at a single choke point that might be the UN. We can put all our heads together, pull all our resources, and figure out how to scientifically surmount such a challenge that is starvation, such a challenge as running out of water, such a challenge as running out of room on this planet for the human population. When we take a united scientific front, but it has to be united, otherwise we are competing with each other and we face death in another way. When we combine as one humanity, we can allow ourselves to give ourselves a chance that we've never been able to have in the past. Through modern science, through modern effort, we can surmount the vast majority of the problems that most countries besides first world countries greet every day. Starvation, lack of water, lack of stability in government, lack of care for the poorest of us, medical care, and things like that. We can surmount these things as a united humanity. But if we choose to fight against each other, then we face death at the hands of each other and not at the hands of nature, should we fail. It's better to have pooled our resources, to unite as a humanity, and fail, than it is to fight each other and face death in that way. In my opinion, evil exists, the idea of evil, the reason why we have this idea that we've come up with through many different philosophical terms, but the general term is evil, is because there is a need to break stagnation. If we don't progress past a certain point, because there is no need to progress past a certain point when it comes to medical aid for new diseases or weapons to overcome armies that are especially troublesome to the majority of mankind. If we don't meet these obstacles, then there is no need to further ourselves, and we end up dying a slower death, a slower starvation. This might be a very brisk approach to philosophy, but it is an idea to consider, and it's not something that I've thought for very long, but it's something worth considering. Why does evil exist in the literal, physical sense? But why does evil exist in the spiritual sense? Now, stagnation spiritually, before it was about resources and us meeting the challenge and developing certain technologies and overcome people who are terrible people. But if we're just talking about spirituality, then it is good to have the motivator of internal chaos that spiritual evil is. Internal chaos is what allows us to meet the challenge and see the need to meet the challenge of how this mortal body limits us, and how we can overcome this mortal body, and how we can progress towards breaking the chains of material altogether. Spiritual chaos is necessary in order to feel the need to break free of material confines. Because if we don't, then we'll just stagnate. If there was no Loki in Asgard, for instance, then all the gods would have stagnated. Thor would have never gotten his hammer, and the cycle of time would not have progressed. Yggdrasil would stop growing, it would not be destroyed, it would not continue to grow, and even if it did grow, and Yggdrasil being the representation of the many dimensions throughout the multiverse, if it continued to grow, then it wouldn't matter, because without the destruction, then there would be an overfilling of life, meaning that resources would run out, and then it would have to face the death, a certain death through that instance. Now, this is very spiritually obscure, and it's more of an analogy than anything else, but it still applies. Now, a long time ago, two tribes on the border of the Roman Empire wanted into Rome. Now, one tribe was let in because Rome they wanted soldiers, and the other tribe was kept out, and that tribe was fleeing from other barbarians. One tribe was kept out because not only did they not have enough food, but they wanted a buffer between them and that other barbarian group. So one tribe was let in and given a little bit of food, and the other tribe was kept out. But Rome did not have, this is key, Rome did not have the resources to supply food to even those that they let in. So they were selling them dogs for their children so that they could eat the dogs and give their children into slavery. Now, the problem that the Romans confronted is they got neither the buffer nor the soldiers for their army. But the real problem is that they tried to get both. They did not unite their resources either to keep the barbarians out or let all of them in. And even if they did let all of them in, then they wouldn't be able to supply food. But with our international economy now, as connected as we are, with the shipping routes as they are, we can have a global network of a sharing of resources and a pooling of minds and efforts in order to surmount a lack of resources should it come in the near future, which I'm sure that it will. Now, the thing about the overarching message that I'm trying to get at is that we choose to exist and cooperate as a united whole against death, against nature, in other words, that will come if we do not pool our resources and minds to overcome need through science, through modernization. We should take advantage of our modernized society, our modernized world, in order to take on the challenges that will greet our children in the near future. Now, we can either do this or we can fail by fighting each other and meeting death in that way and end up, honestly, never really having a chance to surmount death as an obstacle, to surmount death when it comes to pulling our resources and being able to create greater amounts of food or colonize other planets. Or, honestly, just cutting out the forced breeding of cattle so that we can feed that corn that we feed to cattle to the rest of the world, and we'd increase the world's food supplies by 20 to 40%, solving world hunger if we didn't force breed cattle. That's just one option, but we have to pull our resources and really critically think about this. We can't just toss aside the idea that we can't work together because we're so different. We should instead of fighting each other, which that fight will come if our resources run as low as they are now and keep on running low when it comes to food and clean water and gasoline, things like that. So I rather that we meet death through a united effort to overcome it, rather than killing each other over the same consumption of resources and techniques that we've been living through for the past millennia. We haven't been looking for solutions that are global. We've been looking for individual solutions in our personal nation, which never solves the eternal question of how we tackle death as a single, undivided humanity. I hope this video has been interesting. This has been a video about if we run out of resources as a humanity. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you think my idea of evil is incorrect, and this is a more recent contemplation of mine as far as the evil analogy. If you think that my idea of resources and us coming together as one is incorrect, or that we're going to run out and we have to come together, feel free to shoot down in the comment section below. But if you agree with me, if you like this video at all, if you thought this was an interesting topic, hit that thumbs up down there. I greatly appreciate it. And all of you, I want you to remember one thing, that there is a graveyard in our future, the graveyard that you see. But it can either be a vast graveyard of a failed effort to gain resources on an individual level, or two other options, a vast graveyard of us failing to encounter and overcome death, which is at least dying gloriously. And the third and most preferable option, of course, is that we surmount death. We overcome death through lack of resources by pulling what resources we have available, pulling our minds together, pooling our technology together as a one united humanity, and facing the challenge head on to where we overcome it, where we colonize other planets, where we find more effective ways of feeding ourselves and producing clean water, and protect ourselves from the ever harmful rays of the sun because of our damage to the atmosphere and climate change. The only way we survive, the only way that we can survive, is through a united human front, focusing our efforts against that challenge which will eventually come to us all, no matter what country we're in. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to support me on Patreon, please do so at www.patreon.com/darkrealist, capital D, capital R. And now I only ask for $1 a month, but feel free to donate more. I greatly appreciate it for a little extra content that will be blocked if you don't donate at least $1 a month. But at any rate, I hope that we all think about this question some more, as we have throughout our lives, throughout humanity's life. And then we've all considered death in this way if we don't have enough at one time or another individually. But this is something we're thinking about regardless. All of you, consider yourself, consider your situation, and have a great day.